8 Powerful Buddhist Morning Habits That Will Change Your Life. Have you ever wondered why some people wake up feeling peaceful and energized, while others start their day with stress and exhaustion? Science and ancient wisdom agree on one thing: your morning habits shape your entire day. Yet, most people unknowingly sabotage their own peace from the moment they open their eyes. Studies show that nearly 80% of people check their phones first thing in the morning, instantly triggering anxiety and distraction. But what if there was a better way, one that has been practiced for centuries by Zen monks and great spiritual masters? In today's video on Zen Buddhism wisdom, we'll explore 8 powerful morning habits inspired by Buddhist philosophy that can transform the way you start your day. These practices are designed to bring clarity, focus, and inner peace, helping you navigate life with greater ease and mindfulness. Stay with me until the end, because the final habit is one that many overlook, but it holds the key to lasting happiness and fulfillment. Let's dive in. Habit 1: The power of mindful breathing. In Buddhism, the breath is often described as the anchor of awareness, the thread that connects our wandering mind to the present moment. The way we breathe in the morning sets the foundation for how we experience the rest of the day. Yet, in modern life, we have become disconnected from this simple but profound practice. Consider this: when you wake up, do you immediately check your phone, exposing yourself to a flood of notifications, messages, and news updates? This instant overstimulation throws the mind into reactive mode, hijacking our inner peace before the day even begins. The Buddha taught that before engaging with the world, we must first return to ourselves. And the easiest way to do this? Through the breath. Ancient Zen masters compared the breath to the flow of a quiet river. When observed mindfully, it brings clarity and stillness. Thich Nhat Hanh, the renowned Vietnamese Zen master, often said, "Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor." This simple yet powerful truth reminds us that, no matter the chaos around us, returning to the breath grounds us in the now. It is through this awareness that monks and spiritual seekers throughout history have cultivated unshakable peace. Even outside Buddhist practice, mindful breathing was a secret weapon of the ancient samurai. These warriors, known for their razor-sharp focus in battle, practiced ibuki breathing, a controlled, deep breathing technique that calmed the mind and heightened reflexes. Before drawing their swords, samurai warriors took a deep, deliberate breath to sharpen their awareness. They knew that in the face of danger, fear and panic could be overpowered by breath control. Imagine applying this principle to daily life. Instead of waking up and diving into stress, what if you started your morning like a Zen monk or a samurai, fully present, fully aware? Neuroscience confirms what Buddhist teachings have known for millennia: the way you breathe affects the way you think and feel. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that slow, intentional breathing reduces cortisol, the stress hormone, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and increases focus. In short, mindful breathing is not just a spiritual practice, it's a scientifically proven tool for mental resilience. A few years ago, I made a simple change. Instead of checking my phone first thing in the morning, I sat up in bed, closed my eyes, and took 5 slow, deep breaths. At first, it felt strange, almost too simple to be effective. But over time, I noticed a profound shift. My mind felt clearer, my emotions more stable, my days more intentional. So, tomorrow morning, before you reach for your phone, take a deep breath. Feel it. Own it. Let it set the tone for your day. You might be surprised at how this one small habit transforms your life. Habit 2: Expressing gratitude. Gratitude is not just a polite gesture, it is a profound shift in perception, a way of seeing the world through the lens of abundance rather than lack. In Buddhist philosophy, gratitude is considered a direct path to inner peace because it dissolves the illusion of insufficiency. The more we focus on what we have, the less power our desires and anxieties hold over us. Yet, in today's world, we are conditioned to chase after what is next, what is missing, what is better. This endless pursuit leaves us feeling empty, no matter how much we accumulate. But what if the secret to happiness was not in gaining more, but in appreciating what already exists? Consider the story of King Pasenadi of Kosala, a powerful ruler during the Buddhist time. Despite his wealth and dominion, he constantly felt restless, fearing loss and always seeking more. One day, he approached the Buddha and asked, "Why, even with all my riches, do I feel so unsatisfied?" The Buddha handed him a simple bowl of rice and said, "Eat this, but with every bite, be fully present and grateful." The king, puzzled but obedient, followed the instruction. As he ate mindfully, appreciating the warmth and nourishment of each bite, a realization struck him: he had never truly savored anything in his life. He had been too consumed by what he lacked to appreciate what he possessed. From that day forward, he began practicing gratitude. And his restless mind found peace. Modern neuroscience now validates what Buddhism has taught for centuries. Studies at the University of California, Berkeley, show that practicing gratitude daily physically rewires the brain, strengthening neural pathways associated with happiness and reducing stress-related activity in the amygdala, the part of the brain that triggers fear and anxiety. In essence, gratitude is not just a spiritual practice, it is a scientifically proven tool for rewiring the mind for resilience and contentment. Even in the harshest of circumstances, gratitude has the power to transform suffering into strength. Take the example of Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, who endured unimaginable horrors in Nazi concentration camps. Amidst starvation, brutality, and despair, Frankl chose to focus on small moments of gratitude, appreciating a sunrise through barbed wire, savoring a tiny piece of bread, or feeling warmth from another prisoner's kindness. He later wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that gratitude was one of the few freedoms that could never be taken away, and it played a vital role in his survival. For me, incorporating gratitude into my mornings was a game changer. At first, it felt forced, just another checklist item. But as I persisted, something shifted. Instead of waking up with a sense of obligation, I woke up with appreciation. Some days, I was grateful for big things: my health, my loved ones, my purpose. Other days, it was the smallest joys: a warm cup of tea, the sound of rain, the comfort of my bed. And yet, even these small acknowledgements carried immense power. They shaped my mindset, softened my anxieties, and created a ripple effect that transformed my entire day. Gratitude is not about ignoring challenges or pretending that life is perfect. It is about realizing that, even in imperfection, there is beauty. That, even in struggle, there are blessings. And that, even in the most ordinary moments, there is something extraordinary waiting to be appreciated. Habit 3. Setting intentions for the day. Most people wake up and allow the day to pull them in whatever direction circumstances dictate: emails, deadlines, unexpected problems. They react rather than act, drifting through their day without a sense of control. But in Buddhism, the mind is like a garden. If you do not plant the seeds of intention, weeds of distraction and negativity will take over. Setting an intention each morning is a way of consciously choosing what kind of day you want to cultivate. It is not just about productivity but about aligning your actions with your deeper values. In Buddhist philosophy, right intention, sammasakkappa, is a pillar of the Noble Eightfold Path. It teaches that our thoughts precede our actions and, ultimately, shape our reality. If you start the day with an intention of patience, kindness, or mindfulness, you are far more likely to embody those qualities when challenges arise. The mind, like a river, follows the course you carve for it. History offers many examples of the power of setting intentions. One of the most striking comes from Emperor Ashoka of India. In his early reign, Ashoka was a ruthless conqueror, expanding his empire through war and violence. But after witnessing the devastation of the Kalinga War, he set a new intention: to rule with wisdom and compassion rather than force. This single shift in mindset transformed not only his leadership but the fate of his empire. Ashoka dedicated the rest of his life to spreading Buddhist principles, building hospitals, planting trees, and ensuring his people thrived. His story is a testament to how a conscious intention, set and followed through, can reshape an entire life. Neuroscience echoes this wisdom. Studies in cognitive psychology show that individuals who start their day with a clear intention are significantly more focused, less stressed, and more resilient to distractions. Setting an intention rewires the brain's neural pathways, reinforcing the habits and behaviors you aspire to cultivate. Consider Michael, a schoolteacher who once struggled with stress and frustration in his classroom. Mornings felt chaotic, and by the end of the day, he was mentally drained. But after learning about Buddhist intention setting, he made a small but powerful change. Each morning, before stepping into his classroom, he paused, took a deep breath, and silently affirmed, "Today, I will be patient and present." At first, it felt insignificant, but over time, it became his anchor. When students misbehaved or unexpected challenges arose, instead of reacting with frustration, he reminded himself of his morning intention. His classroom experience transformed, not because the students changed, but because his mindset did. This practice is incredibly simple yet profoundly effective. Before reaching for your phone or diving into the demands of the day, pause. Take a deep breath and set a clear intention. It doesn't need to be complex. Today, I will be calm. Today, I will listen with compassion. Today, I will act with courage. The words you choose shape the way you navigate the hours ahead. Over time, this small practice will not just change your days, it will change your life. Habit 4: Mindful movement. Modern life has trained us to move unconsciously. We rush from task to task, lost in thought, barely aware of our bodies. Yet in Buddhism, movement is not just about getting from one place to another, it is an opportunity to cultivate mindfulness. The way we move shapes the way we think. A restless body leads to a restless mind, while mindful movement anchors us in the present moment, allowing clarity to emerge. Buddha once said, "When walking, walk. When sitting, sit. But don't wobble." This simple yet profound teaching speaks to the power of undivided attention. When you move with full awareness, your mind stops oscillating between past regrets and future anxieties. You return to the here and now, where life is actually happening. This is why Buddhist monks incorporate walking meditation into their daily routines. Each step becomes a sacred act of presence. One historical figure who understood the transformative power of mindful movement was Miyamoto Musashi, Japan's legendary swordsman and philosopher. Unlike other warriors who relied solely on brute strength, Musashi trained his mind and body as one. He practiced Iaido, a form of swordsmanship that emphasized fluid, intentional movement. Every draw, every step, every breath was performed with absolute mindfulness. His mastery was not just about fighting, it was about deep presence. He famously wrote in the Book of Five Rings, "Do nothing that is of no use." This echoes Buddhist wisdom: move with awareness, and even the simplest actions gain meaning. Modern science validates what ancient traditions have long known. Studies show that slow, intentional movements, such as yoga, tai chi, or mindful walking, lower cortisol levels, improve focus, and enhance emotional regulation. The body carries stress, and movement is a way of releasing it. When you move mindfully, you shift from a reactive state to a grounded one. Consider the story of a monk who once struggled with impatience. He hurried through his daily tasks, always focused on the next thing. One day, the Buddha observed him and simply said, "Walk as if each step is kissing the earth." The monk took this to heart. From that day forward, he moved with full awareness, feeling the texture of the ground beneath his feet, noticing the rhythm of his breath. Slowly, his restless mind calmed. This practice is easy to apply in daily life. Instead of rushing through your morning routine, slow down. Take 5 minutes to stretch, not as an obligation but as a moment of self-connection. If you walk, walk with purpose, feel the ground, sense the air. Let go of distraction. Even something as simple as sipping your morning tea can be transformed into an act of mindfulness. Instead of gulping it down while scrolling through your phone, hold the cup, feel its warmth, inhale the aroma, and take a conscious sip. In a world that constantly pushes us to move faster, mindful movement is a radical act of reclaiming presence. It is not about doing more, it is about being more. Habit 5, Mindful Eating. In today's world, eating has become a mindless act, something we do while checking emails, watching TV, or scrolling through our phones. We consume food, but we rarely experience it. Yet in Buddhism, eating is not just about fueling the body, it is an act of deep presence, a ritual of gratitude and awareness. Every meal is an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to cultivate appreciation for the nourishment we receive. Buddha once taught, "When you eat, just eat." These words seem simple, but they hold a profound truth. Eating should be an experience of full awareness, feeling the texture of each bite, noticing the flavors unfolding on your tongue, appreciating the effort that went into growing and preparing your food. In Zen monasteries, monks engage in oryoki, a highly ritualized form of mindful eating. Each movement, lifting the bowl, taking a bite, setting down chopsticks, is performed with deep focus. There is no rushing, no multitasking, only presence. A famous historical example of mindful eating comes from the 13th century Zen master Dogen, founder of the Soto Zen school. In his teachings, he emphasized that cooking and eating were as much a part of spiritual practice as meditation itself. He wrote in Tenzo Kyakan, "Instructions for the cook do not see cooking as a lowly task, it is an expression of the way itself." He believed that how we eat reflects how we live. When we consume food carelessly, we cultivate carelessness in other areas of life. But when we eat with intention, we cultivate awareness, gratitude, and a sense of interconnectedness. Modern science echoes these ancient teachings. Research shows that mindful eating enhances digestion, reduces overeating, and increases overall satisfaction with meals. When we eat in a state of stress or distraction, our bodies struggle to absorb nutrients properly. But when we slow down and engage with our food, we signal to our nervous system that we are safe, allowing digestion to function optimally. There's a Zen story about a young monk who hurried through his meals, barely tasting his food. One day, the Buddha asked him, "Do you eat to nourish your body, or do you simply fill your stomach?" The monk realized he had never truly experienced a meal before, only consumed it. From that day forward, he ate slowly, savoring each bite. Over time, he noticed something profound. The same food tasted richer, more satisfying, more alive. You can apply this practice easily. Tomorrow morning, instead of rushing through breakfast, take a few moments to pause. Look at your food. Appreciate where it came from. Chew slowly, noticing every flavor and texture. Set down your utensils between bites. Feel the warmth of your tea or coffee in your hands before taking a sip. Eating mindfully isn't about adding more to your routine, it's about transforming something ordinary into something sacred. In a world where speed is valued above stillness, mindful eating is an act of defiance. It is a way to reclaim presence, to honor the gift of nourishment, and to remind ourselves that even the simplest moments can be filled with meaning. Habit 6, Practicing compassion. Compassion is not just an emotion, it is a force that can transform both our inner world and the world around us. In Buddhism, it is said that to cultivate true peace, one must first cultivate compassion. And the best time to begin is in the morning when the mind is fresh, before the burdens of the day take hold. Buddha once encountered a man who hurled insults at him, hoping to provoke a reaction. But instead of responding with anger, Buddha simply smiled and asked, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, confused, replied, "To the one who offered it." Buddha nodded and said, "Then so it is with your anger. I do not accept it. And therefore, it remains yours." This moment illustrates a profound truth. anger and resentment only harm the one who clings to them. When we choose compassion, we free ourselves from the weight of negativity. One of the greatest historical examples of compassion in action comes from the life of the Dalai Lama. In 1959, after the Chinese invasion of Tibet, he was forced into exile, witnessing the suffering of his people. Many expected him to harbor hatred, but instead, he responded with forgiveness. He once said, "If I did not practice compassion, my own heart would be poisoned." Despite the loss of his homeland, he continues to advocate for peace, proving that compassion is not weakness but a source of immense strength. Science also affirms the power of compassion. Studies show that practicing loving-kindness meditation, metta bhavana, a Buddhist technique of mentally sending good wishes to others, reduces stress, increases happiness, and even improves physical health. When we wish well for others, "May you be happy, may you be free from suffering," our brains release oxytocin, the hormone of connection and love. I personally began practicing this habit by starting each morning with a simple thought, "May someone I know find happiness today." Sometimes, I focused on a friend, a family member, or even a stranger I had passed on the street. On difficult days, I directed this wish toward myself. The effect was subtle but profound. My interactions became softer. My patience grew, and I found myself responding to negativity with greater ease. You can incorporate this practice into your mornings in just a few seconds. Before getting out of bed, close your eyes and think of someone, anyone. It could be a loved one, a difficult colleague, or even someone who has wronged you. Silently wish them well, "May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free from suffering." This simple act plants a seed of kindness that will shape how you interact with the world. Compassion is not just about grand gestures, it is about the small, unseen moments where we choose understanding over judgment, love over resentment. And when practiced consistently, it becomes more than a habit, it becomes a way of being. Habit 7. Reading or listening to the teachings of the Buddha. Starting your day by absorbing the wisdom of the Buddha is like planting a seed of clarity and peace in your mind. Just as a river carves through rock over time, the daily practice of engaging with Buddhist teachings gradually shapes our consciousness, making us more mindful, compassionate, and resilient. In Buddhist monastic traditions, monks begin their mornings by chanting sutras or reflecting on the Buddha's words, allowing his timeless wisdom to serve as a guide through the challenges of the day. There is a famous story of a young monk who approached his master with a restless heart. "Master," he said, "I meditate, I perform acts of kindness, yet my mind remains unsettled. What more can I do?" The master smiled and handed him a book of sutras. "Each morning, read one passage and let it sit within you. The mind is like a field, if you do not sow good seeds, weeds will grow instead. The words of the Buddha are the water that nourishes your inner peace." History is filled with those who found solace in Buddhist teachings. One of the most well-known examples is Emperor Ashoka of India. Once a ruthless conqueror, his heart was transformed upon reading the Buddhist scriptures. Overwhelmed by remorse for the destruction he had caused, he devoted the rest of his life to spreading peace and dharma. His story is a testament to the power of wisdom. The right words, at the right time, can completely alter the course of a life. Scientific research also supports this practice. Studies have shown that starting the day with an uplifting or insightful message increases focus, reduces anxiety, and fosters a positive mindset. The mind, upon waking, is in a highly absorbent state, making it the perfect time to instill thoughts of wisdom rather than letting negativity or distractions take hold. Incorporating this habit into your morning routine doesn't require drastic effort. Spend just 5 minutes reading a passage from the Dhammapada, a Zen koan, or a teaching on mindfulness. If reading isn't an option, listening to a Dharma talk while preparing for the day can be just as transformative. The key is not just to consume the words but to internalize them. Take a moment to reflect, how can this teaching shape my actions today? Over time, you may find that these teachings become a quiet voice in your mind, gently guiding you when faced with difficulties. Just as the body is nourished by food, the mind is nourished by wisdom. And when you begin each morning with the words of the Buddha, you are not just preparing for the day ahead, you are cultivating a life of mindfulness, clarity, and peace. Habit 8. Performing a kind act as the first action of the day. In Buddhism, the first action of the day is like the first brushstroke on a blank canvas. It sets the tone for everything that follows. When you begin your morning with an act of kindness, no matter how small, you are consciously shaping your reality with compassion and positive energy. Just as a single drop of water can create ripples across an entire pond, a simple good deed can have effects far beyond what we can see. One day, a man approached the Buddha and asked, "Master, how can I ensure that my day unfolds with joy and harmony?" The Buddha smiled and replied, "Plant a seed of kindness in the morning, and watch how the day blossoms." The man was puzzled, so the Buddha continued. Before the sun reaches its peak, perform one selfless act. Give without expecting, love without conditions. This is the secret to a peaceful heart. Inspired, the man began each day with a small act of kindness, helping a stranger, offering a kind word, or simply wishing someone well. Over time, he noticed that his days felt lighter, and his heart, once heavy with worries, became as free as the wind. History is rich with examples of how a single act of kindness can alter the course of events. One such story comes from the time of Emperor Ashoka. After witnessing the devastation of his own conquests, he encountered a Buddhist monk who offered him nothing but compassion. That single interaction led Ashoka to embrace Buddhism, turning from a ruthless warrior into one of history's greatest advocates for peace. A single moment of kindness changed not just his heart, but the fate of an entire empire. Modern science echoes these ancient teachings. Research in positive psychology has shown that engaging in an act of kindness, especially in the morning, can significantly boost serotonin and dopamine, the brain's happiness chemicals. People who practice daily generosity report higher levels of life satisfaction, reduced stress, and deeper connections with others. Incorporating this habit into your morning routine is effortless yet profoundly impactful. Send an uplifting message to a friend, make tea for a loved one, hold the door for a stranger, or silently wish happiness upon someone you pass on the street. These actions, though small, carry immense spiritual weight. When you start your day by giving, you align yourself with the natural flow of kindness in the universe. Over time, you will notice something remarkable. Kindness becomes effortless. It stops being something you do and starts being something you are. And when your very essence radiates compassion, life itself responds in kind, reflecting back to you the warmth you have given. Imagine waking up every morning with a sense of calm, clarity, and purpose. No more rushing, no more stress, just a deep connection to yourself and the present moment. When you practice these simple Buddhist-inspired habits, you'll start to notice a profound shift in your life. Your mind becomes clearer, your heart lighter, and your energy more positive, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. But remember, transformation doesn't happen overnight. You don't need to implement all these habits at once. Start with just one or two that resonate with you, and gradually build from there. What matters most is consistency, because even the smallest mindful action, done daily, can lead to incredible change. Which of these habits have you tried before? Or is there one you're excited to start practicing? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you found value in this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our Zen Buddhism Wisdom community for more insights on mindfulness, meditation, and living a more awakened life. Let's walk this path together, one mindful morning at a time. See you in the next video.